Is there a way out to the dilemma of Qatar and Muslims to alleviate their enmity of homosexuality and homosexuals? What is the reason for all such fear? Why all this war against gays? Is it true that they threaten Muslim societies? Is homosexuality really a threat to Muslim morals? Is it true that Islam as a religion rejects it? Did it exist in Islamic history, and were there gay caliphs and rulers? What is the reason behind all this hostility towards the other who is different, whether Muslim or non-Muslim? For how long will a Muslim remain in enmity with the world? Welcome to With Shoaib Show. Welcome, my friends, to With Shoaib Show. Our paramount question today: is there a solution to the dilemma of Qatar and Islamic countries with homosexuality and homosexuals? Is the problem only related to homosexuals, but according to the perception of the widespread version of Islam, or the extensive perception of Islam, with all minorities in general, religious and ethnic? Like atheists, Christians and non-Muslims mostly. And even with some Muslims who have different perceptions? Is this problem in Islam itself as a religion, or in specific versions of Islam? Homophobia is not limited to extremists only, such as the Indian preacher Zakir Naik, or the famous Egyptian football player Mohammed Abu Trika, who belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood. But it also included those who are against political Islam organizations, such as the famous Egyptian broadcaster Ahmed Adib. Indeed, Islamic countries, with their laws and institutions, are hostile to homosexuality, and punish it. In addition to sectors of the left and liberals, whether Muslims or non-Muslims. Together with most Christians, especially in the Middle East, as they are against homosexuality based on their sacred scriptures. And these people oppose each other and sometimes fight in Islamic countries, in one way or another, but they agreed to be hostile to homosexuals and homosexuals in different degrees. But in this episode, we will only talk about why the widespread version of Islam fights, or perhaps imprisons or kills homosexuals. And why do you fight the different other in general? There are many arguments, including defending our religion, customs, traditions, and others. And as the famous Egyptian football player Abu Trika, a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, said, "We will not change our religion and customs for a mere 28 days. He is here referring to the FIFA World Cup in Qatar. The announcer, the famous Egyptian Ahmed Adib, who is strongly against the Brotherhood, also denounced the insistence on raising the issue of homosexuals in the World Cup in Qatar. And he said, I wish I knew what is the power of gays in the world, so that they impose themselves in such a strong way in a global sporting celebration. For the same reason, you will find there a Qatari eagerness to create an Islamic character for the international sports celebration. Like distributing the Quran and other similar things to fans, such as hosting sheikhs who preach non-Muslims to Islam in a sports celebration. The most famous of them is Zakir Naik, the Indian preacher who adopts the widespread version of Islam, and accused of corruption and other cases in his country, India. The weird thing is that he has a famous statement in which he said that football is forbidden, haram. Or like talking about the great achievement that Qatar made, that it basically banned alcohol or beer from the stands of the stadiums, and those who promoted this great victory did not reveal that it is present in the box seats, places designated for the first class, and is also present in the stadiums, and also in many places in Qatar like bars and hotels. Or prevalent on social media such as the thousands who embrace Islam in Qatar. These are, of course, lies, with no evidence. That is, there is confusion and bewilderment, which indicates that an Islamic country such as Qatar, Egypt, or others remains part of the world, and accepts different cultures, which did not only come from outside its borders, but also existed on its soil. This confusion and this bewilderment are expression of that version of Islam that the rulers of Qatar believe in and defend, and it forbids alcohol, homosexuality, dancing, singing and other things, and at the same time Qatar hosts the Lebanese singer Marian Fairs and others to dance and sing, and at the same time there are alcohol. What confirms this dilemma among Muslims is that such religious manifestations have not occurred before in whatsoever World Cup in any non-Muslim country. I mean, this is the first time, because it is the first time that the World Cup is organized in an Islamic country. This makes me firstly ask today, is it true that Islam criminalizes homosexuality and orders the killing of homosexuals? First and foremost, it is important to say that there is no such thing called Islam, because Islam, like any other religion, does not speak. I mean, the Holy Quran does not speak, but it does speak when people interact with it. Islam is like any religion, it has unlimited trends, doctrines. That is why we do not have one Islam, but we do have many Islams. We have Islam, for example, that prohibits alcohol, and punishes the non-veiled, and believes in killing homosexuals. And we have other Islams that reject all this and believe that Islam should not have authority over any person, meaning Islam is a personal matter, and we have third Islams that believe that Islam is not originally against homosexuality, but rather supports it. The Islams that prohibit homosexuality and order the killing of homosexuals, call it sodomy, and consider it one of the ugliest crimes, the awful among sins, and the worst of actions. It is a sign of dissent and deterioration. They rely on verses in the Holy Quran, including, "And we had sent Lot when he said to his people, do you commit such immorality as no one has preceded you with from among the worlds?" And those who believe in this type of Islam also quote what they call the consensus of the companions of Prophet to kill homosexuals, but they differed in the method, so some demanded that he be burned. I mean, the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, Ali bin Abu Talib orders the killing of people because they are of different sexual inclination, and the second Caliph Abu Bakr acted like him. This means that the Muslim ruler Abu Bakr also killed people because they differ in sexual orientation. It is crucial to say here that all these narratives do not have any historical scientific evidence that they took place, or happened the way the Arab Islamic narratives tell. However, such narratives are treated by many Muslims as true. We again tackle the attitude of this type of Islam towards homosexuality. There are jurists who punish homosexuals, they should be thrown from a high place, followed by stones, and this is the saying of Ibn Abbas, may God be pleased with him. I mean, after they throw stones at him, they complete it with stones in order to make sure that they killed him. Horrible. This is exactly what ISIS did. And among them are those who said, he should be stoned until he dies, like the punishment of the adulterer and the adulteress. There are other Islams or other opinions in Islam, ensuring that Islam is not against homosexuality and did not prohibit it in the first place, and there are many of them. I will take the example of Imam Ludwig Mohammed Zaad, the Algerian French. Sheikh Ludwig is an imam of a mosque in France, and has an organization that defends gays and lesbians. He published a book on the Quran and sex in 2012, and did a PhD on Islam and homosexuality. Ludwig underwent a difficult journey of knowledge and research, and discovered that homosexuality is not a disease, and that homosexuals are human beings at any rate, and they deserve to live like all human beings, enjoying all rights, and that their homosexuality should not be an obstacle to them. I mean, it is not appropriate to be a reason for depriving them of their rights as human beings. And that the obstacle, in his opinion, is in the fascism that seized the Islamic religion, and those fascists are no different from the Nazis when they tried to control the identities of others, or to be precise, erase them and obliterate different people. While Islam, in his opinion, is a religion of peace. Sheikh Mohammed Zaad moves to an important point, that there is no reference to homosexuality in the Holy Quran. I mean, the Quran never mentioned homosexuality or homosexuals. And he confirms that during the era of Prophet Muhammad, the effeminate is the referred to. It was clear that many of the companions of the Prophet hated them. But the Prophet, says Elder Ludwig, protected at least one of them from execution. I mean, the Prophet was not against homosexuals. Imam Ludwig asserts that the Quran spoke only of the story of Lot's people, who worshipped idols and engaged in sexual activity with the same sex, but violently and forcefully like rape. I mean, the problem is not in homosexuality, but the Quran only refuses that such sexual practices take place with violence or rape. The Quran, according to the opinion of Imam Muhammad Zahid, means that it is not against any sexual practices, but against the act of rape, whatever it is. Whether it is between a man and a man, or a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, or a man and a woman. The Imam and Sheikh Ludwig moves to a second point where he says, they quoted from the Prophet that he said that homosexuality shakes the throne of the Most Merciful, meaning the throne of our Lord. However, the Muslim jurist Ibn al-Qayyim, who died in the year 1350 AH, considered this hadith to be incorrect. The Muslim jurist, Muhammad al-Batani, who died in the year 1578 AH and was nicknamed the King of Scholars, who is from South Asia, also confirmed that this hadith is weak. Likewise, Sheikh Ludwig confirms that the hadith calling for the killing of homosexuals, both partners, is weak. Islam, as he says, does not call for killing, even in case of adultery. Islam is a religion of peace. This is a central idea for the type of Islam that Sheikh Zayed adopts. Islam, in his opinion, did not have a problem with the she-males, because they were born as such. Namely, they did not choose to be bisexual. The Sheikh or Imam Lufid says about himself that I am gay and not effeminate. And I think that the meaning of effeminate, which Sheikh Zayed meant, is the one who was born with two organs, a female and male genitals. Ludwig, as an imam of a mosque and founder of an association, actually held a marriage ceremony, meaning he worked as an authorized person for many marriages between homosexual Muslims, whether men or women. Ludwig or Sheikh Muhammad Zahid is not an exceptional case. There are similar sheikhs of mosques in Canada, America and a number of European countries. Not because that country has a decay, as the Islamists and most sheikhs say, but because it is a country that recognized the right of different people to a humane life, as long as they do not harm anyone. We also have an Azhari sheikh, Dr. Mustafa Rashid, who confirms that the World Health Organization says that homosexuality is not a disease to be treated, but we may call it a congenital defect. In other words, he or she was born like that. I mean, a man, but in a woman's body. Or a woman in a man's body. Dr. Mustafa Rashid, the Mufti of Australia, established that the issue of prohibition is caused by a wrong understanding of the Holy Quran. The verses that tackle Lot's people address them alone and not others. That is to say, it does not apply to any Muslim or non-Muslim in any place or time. I mean, and these are my words, not the words of Sheikh Rashid, they are religious stories like others, and Muslims are not supposed to extract eternal rulings from them. Likewise, Rashid called on the Islamic State to support sexual transformation with money and to be under its supervision. We come to an important point, which is that, were homosexuality and homosexuals invented and defended by the West? As the famous football player Abu Trika and the famous journalist Amr Adib say, the truth is that homosexuality has existed throughout the history of Muslims. Rather, it was practiced and defended even by Muslim rulers, as well as judges, poets and other elites. I mean, it is not only the decadent West that has homosexuals. I will mention some of them, and those who want to know more can refer to the links under this episode. The Muslim jurist and historian Al-Tabari tells that the Caliph Al-Amin, the son of the famous Caliph Harun al-Rashid, sought eunuchs and bought them, exalted them and took them for his solitude day and night. And he rejected free women and slaves. They say that his mother tried to pressure him to stop that, so she brought him girls who looked like boys, but he refused them. And the ministers of the Caliph Al-Amin and his entourage, whenever they wanted to ask him for something, they used to mediate the boy who was in love with him, and his name was Mahaj. Likewise, there were homosexual judges, including Judge Yahya bin Aktham, the chief judge, a religious knowledgeable sheikh, and he had a great influence on the Caliph al-Mamun, and to him is attributed a poem in which he flirts with two young men, and it is said that he was dismissed from his post because of these poetic verses. This means that it is mostly not because of the practice of homosexuality. We also might find poets in Islamic history, the most famous of whom was Abu Nuwas. Likewise, the Emperor Caliph al-Mutawakkil had a lover named Shak. And we also find Sultan Mahmud al-Ghaznawi, who invaded India and had a love affair with a man named Malik Ayaz. Islamic heritage also includes stories about homosexuality among women. It is extremely important here to say to the Muslim Brotherhood, Islamists, and most sheikhs who are proud of the Ottoman Islamic Empire, and consider it an Islamic caliphate, and God's state on earth, that in 1858 this state abolished the punishment of gays and lesbians. While the British colonialism in India criminalized homosexuality in the Indian Penal Code, the punishment of gays and lesbians continues until now in India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. I mean, the supposedly infidel Britain punished homosexuals while the Ottoman Islamic colonial empire protected them. It is essential to say that my goal in today's episode is not to convince anyone of homosexuality. But my goal as a Muslim is to say that there are Islams that reject and Islams that accept and support. I have the right as a Muslim, and any person has the same right as well, to reject homosexuality, and not to practice it in his personal life, but I never have the right to incite against them, especially in the Islamic situation that is common in a way that leads to hatred and then murder. Professor Hussein Abbas confirms in a significant research that homosexuals in history, which they call Islamic, preferred, in general, the hairless boy, smooth-faced beardless, and in most cases the white one. And these were kidnapped from Central Asia, from the Turkish tribes that lived there. Not from the usual Turkey we know today. The Muslim poet Abu al-Hasan ibn Abi al-Baghl says, otherwise, the younger are more delicious, and sweeter if you want to have intercourse with. The gay Arab Muslim caliphs or emperors, including Yazid bin Muawiyah. But the most famous in the Umayyad Empire was the Caliph al-Walid bin Yazid bin Abd al-Malik. And after they killed him, his brother Suleiman said, he was trying to seduce me into having sex. It is the right of any Muslim man or woman to see it as permissible and to practice it without harming anyone. As not entitled, a homosexual also does not have the right to impose his sexual choices on other people. This brings us to the question of the famous Egyptian TV talk show host Tamar Adib, who asked where the power of homosexuals comes from. This question is common among many Muslims. The truth is that this power did not come mainly from them, but because Western societies have a firm conviction that in order for societies to remain safe and humane, they must protect difference, meaning that difference does not lead to punishment for the person who is different, whether he is gay, black, Jewish or Muslim. My daughters are in a Catholic school in Canada. They learn sacred respect for differences in color, race and gender. If one of them bullied a different person, or any student bullied a Muslim girl or boy because they are Muslims, they are subjected to punishment, not corporal punishment, but for example they spend the break or have fun alone in a designated place, which means they are forbidden to play with their friends. Of course, Canada is not a paradise for minorities, there are problems, but of course it cannot be compared to Islamic countries such as Qatar. I mean, if you compare it, it becomes paradise, but it certainly did not attain perfection. Most of the Islamic countries have systematic hostility against minorities as they have a constitution and laws hostile to minorities. In the West or in Canada, the country where I live, there is no systematic hostility, however, there are individual mistakes. Society, its constitution, laws, and the majority of it fight any discrimination, racism, or hatred. That is why these communities are disturbed by any violation of human rights around the world. That is why no politician or anyone working in the public domain in Canada can reject gay rights. This is the secret of their strength and the strength of all minorities, that most of those societies unanimously agreed on the sacred respect for human rights. And it recorded this in a constitution and laws strictly implemented on everyone. I mean, they built secular, democratic, free states without religious or non-religious reference. Their reference is simply human rights. This is the dilemma of most Muslims and Islamic countries. The dilemma is that they do not consider religion as a personal matter. But in the Islamic case, they believe that Islam is a state, a law, and a caliphate. This perception or that version of Islam would suppress, oppress and kill, because it wants to impose its religious concept on other people. The person then believes that this is an epiphany from our Lord, and that he is God's agent on earth to achieve this. The funny thing about Islamic countries is that they cannot fully implement that version of Islam. Many Muslims do not tolerate it, and there are Muslims who revolted against it in Sudan during the rule of the member of Muslim Brotherhood Omar al-Bashir, and are revolting against it in Iran now. That is why you find the Lebanese singer Miriam Fairs dancing and singing in Qatar's celebration of the World Cup, and you find alcohol in bars, wineries, hotels, and first-class boxes in stadiums. At the same time, Qatar is preparing extremist sheikhs like the Indian Zakir Naik to spread such version of Islam, who forbids alcohol and football and preaches the killing of homosexuals. The truth is that there is no solution for Islamic societies, in my opinion, except that they transfer religion to the category of an individual choice, meaning that there should be no state, no sharia, no caliphate that entirely governs the world or this kind of stuff. It means your religion is for yourself and you have nothing to do with anyone else, and the relationships of people should be governed by the international covenants of human rights. In this case, Muslims and Islamic societies can live in peace, with all kinds of people. Our Lord did not create the world for the Muslims alone, so that they could control it. In this case, we as Muslims will be a part of human progress and not a tool for destroying humanity. Thank you and see you in next episodes, God willing.